Hi, Joe. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Steve.
We've been doing a series of questions on the Fed, the Federal Reserve monetary policy. You've also been writing about it lately. And in one of the things you wrote kind of stood out a little bit. And that was basically coming out and saying the problem we have nowadays is the Fed. The Fed is the problem. And I think you're talking there in terms about the communication policies, some of the volatility and uncertainty they're introducing in the market. And we've also separately talked about them hiking too much too fast, but maybe you could just expand a little bit in terms of when you look out at the current state of the economy in the US, why is what the Fed's doing that worries you, and why you look at the Fed as really the big problem in the current economy.
Well, a big part of that was about their communication policy. Alan Greenspan very famously said, if you understood what I said, then I misspoke. Until Ben Bernanke came along and pushed this idea of communications policy about telling people what you're going to do before you do it and make sure that they're all set for it. Oh, don't want to have no surprises. We don't want to have any surprises, because they thought that it was the surprises that caused the volatility. And what we're discovering, I think now, it is the communication policy that's causing the problems. And I'll give you the example, most recent example. Look, the Fed had laid out a policy, a policy path of they were going to wind down QE starting in 2021, and it was going to end in March 2022. And they laid this out and said, this is what we're going to do. And then they felt locked into it. They couldn't change. They didn't want to change because they didn't want to surprise the market. But by doing that, what they ended up doing was doing QE way too long. So again, we had this absurd outcome where they were buying mortgage-backed securities in March of 2022, when we had just had over a year of every month housing prices going up at double digits. No way did that make sense. How did they get in that mess? They got in that mess because they talked themselves into a corner. And so I think that back in the day when Alan Greenspan said something, boy, the market reacted. And the market reacted because they respect the Fed, because the Fed's got a giant balance sheet that they can use to accomplish what they need to accomplish in the market. But most of the time, Greenspan, and it's not just him, other Fed chairmen too, they just did things and waited for the market to figure it out. Listen, when I got in this business, you have a Fed meeting day, and they would come out of the meeting and they didn't say anything. They didn't release a statement. They sure as hell didn't have a press conference. We used to gather around the Quotron and watch the Dow Jones Newswire to see if they did anything in the market. Did they do a coupon pass? You had to guess what they were doing. They didn't come out and tell you. And so that being the case, I think people didn't front run the stuff. Now it's like, oh, we know what they're going to do. We know when they're going to do it. So I'm going to do all these things that I would have done after they did it. But since I know it's coming, I'm going to do it ahead of time. The market is not stupid. And this communication policy is just dumb. They back themselves in a corner. They say things and they put themselves on this path. We're going to do this. And the same thing, by the way, same thing happened way back when in 2000s. We got a housing bubble out of it. What did they do? We're going to go slowly. A quarter point a meeting. And they basically told everybody, we're going a quarter point a meeting. So look, people can figure that out. They can look at it and go, okay, so I'm quarter point a meeting. They meet this often. Rates are going to be here and there. They can figure it out. They know how long they have to keep taking all that risk with low rates and borrowing and leveraging, because they know what the path of policy is going to be. That just gave people the confidence to be able to speculate even more than they should have. The Fed should have never told people what they were going to do. I think it's a huge mistake. They need to be able to surprise the market. And so now we're in this path now where Jerome Powell said he's going to deliver pain. Pain, I tell you. Why does he think that we need to be punished? What did we do wrong? I get that there's a lot of leverage in the system, but you know what? The leverage in the system wasn't caused by the guy that's waiting tables. They didn't get caused by the bartender that's going to lose his job. That's not who caused the problem. The problem was caused in financials, in the financial system. That's where the leverage is. The leverage is not it's not even in the corporate level at this point. It's in speculation. It's in crypto coins. It's in all this other crap. That's where the speculation is. And you know what? There's lots of ways they could have crushed that. Now let's not just talk about the Fed. Let's talk about regulators. Why did the SEC ever let crypto coins and all this other stuff that is just nothing more than pure speculative. It's just gambling. Why did they let that get out of hand? It should have been nipped in the bud way long ago, and it wasn't. And so, anyway, the problem is the Fed. By doing this thing, this communication policy, this forward guidance, they call it. Listen, forward guidance would be great if the Fed knew what was going to happen. If the Fed had a functional crystal ball, forward guidance would be great because we would know that the Fed knew it was coming and they were going to fix it. But they don't. They're awful. They're terrible. They're worse than the worst forecaster on Wall Street. They don't even come close. A lot of times they don't even get the direction right, much less the magnitude. Everybody focuses in on this dot plot like it's some kind of something handed down from on high. No, it's not. They have no idea what they're doing. They can't predict the future any more than anybody else can. And if you're going to have a forward guidance policy, a communication policy that says, here's what we're going to do, and it's going to be based on these things, well, if you're wrong, what do? Well, now you got to change it. Now you've just created volatility that you didn't have before. I don't listen. I think that monetary policy, I've said this repeatedly, monetary policy needs to be conducted in a conservative fashion. And doing it the way they do it now is not conservative. It's the opposite. It's crazy.
And I mean, one thing, just talking to people, whether it's investors or business people, I'm starting to hear is what they're hearing is the Fed saying we're going to continue on an aggressive pace to fight inflation, even if it breaks the economy. And I'm starting to get questions of why are they looking to push the U.S. economy into recession? But what do you think the ramifications are of people in business and the investment circles hearing that message?
They're going to take actions that cause the problem. They're going to take actions to protect themselves from a recession that the Fed is announcing loud and clear that they're going to cause. And to me, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's dumb. Again, Alan Greenspan would have never said this. By the way, I'm not a huge Alan Greenspan fan. I think he made some big mistakes during his tenure, but he got some things right too. I don't understand what Jerome Powell thinks people hear when he says what he says. To me, it means that as a business owner, you know what? I'm a business owner. You know what I've done? What I do is I've husbanded cash. Our company has a lot of cash on the books, more than it would have, that we didn't spend on other things. Why? Because Jerome Powell told me we're going to have a recession. I'm no different than anybody else. And if I'm doing that, you can be sure that the guy at Procter & Gamble, the guy at Pepsi, the guy at wherever is doing that too. We hear it from companies now. We hear it in the quarterly conference calls. They say, well, we're going to have a recession next year, so we need to buckle down. Well, what if we didn't have a recession next year? What if we just took the logical action here, paused policy, wait to see how it affects things, and try not to break the economy? Again, I keep saying this, and I think it's absolutely true. Jerome Powell has this idea that everybody in this economy has to atone for his mistake. I personally think the man should resign. I think he's awful as a Fed chairman. But you know what? I don't want the vice chair to be chair either because I don't think she's any better. But yeah, anyway, I think that you're absolutely right. People hear this, they hear this stuff about pain, and they start to prepare. And this goes back to George Soros, reflexivity. This is reflexivity in action. This is the market and people taking actions that cause the problem that they're trying to avoid. I don't know what he expects, but he's going to get it good and hard, I suspect.